Okay, so just put myself up to the top of this. So this week we're going to be talking about the point from kind of getting a client to committing to a job, to hopefully kind of getting a portfolio of clients, managing their expectations, deliverables, deadlines, and more. We're going to start by looking at some of the answers to the exercise that we set. So yeah, I've done some feedback on a couple of them. So the first one, if we roll forward, Liam, I did actually do these in chronological order to start with because we got a few in earlier than the rest of them. So if you didn't make it, then that's half the reason why. So firstly, here we've got Liz's answer. So a good start on this one. My kind of notes on this would be saying that you've introduced yourself and what you do, which is great, and obviously reference a specific release and your intentions as well, rather than just being a blanket sort of would love to work with you scenario. The second sentence showing you understand the client and the style they might go for. And so some points that I would say to work on here would be a bit more of a call to action. So sending some references of your own work that are in a similar style to what you've kind of referenced here as well, just so the client can help to start to visualize your idea. And then signing off also with a call to action was quite helpful. Would you be open to a call to discuss this, or are you currently working with the creative on any of your releases? Would you like to hear more or see a treatment? Give them all an easy way to respond to things. You know, quite often as well when people are moving quite quickly, you know, giving somebody an easy way to come back to something rather than just you know, giving a body of information which is quite hard to respond to, can kind of help you get a good response from it. So the second one, moving on to Kurt. So Kurt did a pitch here for Bilbao BBK Festival, which is great as well. So once again, introducing yourself on what you do, which is great. I think the first sentence kind of talked about harnessing innovative and creative solutions for the purposes of engaging video content. Whilst I think that's great, I think it's probably maybe a little bit too bulky. And you know, in something like a cover letter or something, we're obviously trying to emphasize what you're doing and using some sort of strong emphatic language. Great, but I think for the purposes of this, kind of getting to more to your second point, which is actually a lot better. Not better, sorry, is the kind of engaging part of what you want to get to. I think is the most important part of it. So you know, maybe rather than that kind of first bit with the kind of emphatic language, just using that as a point to maybe say some people that you've worked with, a couple of buzzwords or keywords, so that, you know, as soon as someone's reading that first sentence, they're like, right, he's Kurt, he's a videographer, and he's worked with X, Y, Z to start with. Obviously, I know some of you guys have, you know, are just starting this journey, so that may not reference it, sort of thing. But even just saying where you're from, or, you know, even you could maybe start by saying, you know, I've recently been to the festival, or if it was an artist you've worked with, you know, I've recently seen this release, or that sort of thing. So yeah, so as I said, I think the second sentence is good, as you've shown that you kind of studied their content and you know what they already do as well, and you're using that to kind of pivot onto something you would do with them. So I think it could maybe read a little bit stronger. So I've always admired Bilbao BBK's brilliant and quirky content, and would love the option to come and join you to produce more of it. I have a concept for a video series outlined below. And then again, signing off with that kind of call to action as well. You know, would you be interested in discussing this idea further?
Just on a side note, that's such a great concept, by the way, Kurt.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, I actually kind of want to do it now.
Where are you based, out of interest, Kurt?
London, southeast.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
we'll keep that in mind. There's
nice.
lots of festivals around. Maybe we could try and do it with an artist.
Yeah, you could do it anywhere in theory, right? I just think you need like maybe a slightly more low-key artist, because the big ones are going to be like quite busy. But yeah, it could be.
What springs to mind is we work with DJ Boring all the time. He was always doing silly stuff, so it could be.
Yeah, he'd love that. He's perfect for that.
Yeah, good. That's one around. I'm happy with LJ.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, just goes to show as well. I mean, bearing in mind, Liam working with DJ Meg, they've just spent the whole weekend working with Tomorrowland, creating concepts for festivals, for the festival. So, it's obviously struck a chord there. So it just goes to show that, no idea is a bad idea. So next one, we're on to Hannah. So once again, like some really good points in here. Some of the things that I would expand on more is, we were just talking about, obviously, Hannah, you having shot Multi Festival recently. I think that's like a really good thing to kind of start with. Maybe saying, I'm Hannah, a London-based photographer with experience in live events, having recently shot at, and then, it's always good to kind of put some of those key names in, things like Secret Garden Party, Multi, Labyrinth, obviously all things that you've shot at recently. I think that's always a really good lead in as well for people. There's a part in it where you say, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I think with those sorts of things, I think going in with kind of more confidence in your approach would probably help. People are going to have people reaching out to them left, right, and center. So I don't think those sorts of things probably strengthen the approach in what you're having. Going with confidence, as I said, use those people that you've worked with previously to be that kind of point of interest to start with. And then the same thing as well with the kind of starting with reduced rates. I think that this is a bit of a slippy slope. I don't think that you need to, especially you as well, having worked with clients like these beforehand, I don't think you need to be offering yourself out for a reduced rate. I think go in with a strong and confident approach with all of the stuff that you've kind of shot beforehand, and then you don't get that kind of awkwardness as well if then somebody wants then to use the shoot for them again afterwards, and then suddenly you have to renegotiate fees. So go in strong.
Thank you for that.
No worries. So this is Zayad's one. So I think just the last section in this, and providing clear intentions would be good. So as you're kind of just starting out your kind of journey in your portfolio, things might be limited. So maybe saying something like, you got the right one? Have I missed it out?
We haven't, so we've gone to Emma.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry, I've actually missed out yours on Zayad's. So Zayad's talking about working out in Lebanon, and I'll read it out actually. So it says, "Dear team at Resident Advisor Mutual Friends, I'm Zayad. I'm an experienced marketer and aspiring content creator, currently based in Beirut since 2022, having previously lived and worked in Dubai, London, and New York. I have a strong passion for music, which I've nurtured by completing my studies at Berkeley online, taking an online course at iPhone Photography Academy, and participating in the Doors Open Unlocked online workshops. Always been a huge fan of electronic music and Resident Advisor, having started taking steps to put my passion and creativity into practice by showcasing Lebanon's nightlife and building my content portfolio along the way. I'm already in touch with Lebanon's leading nightlife event organizer, Factory People, so I'm able to fast track this. I'm also open to any freelance opportunities with your team. The value for me is purely in experience itself and being around talented people who help make electronic music a unique experience in its rapidly evolving world. My hope is to find a way to mutually add value." So as I said, some really good points in there. I think the main thing for me is providing clear intentions. Obviously, you talk about you're open to freelance opportunities within your team. What is it that you would want to kind of provide, and where do you want to provide that value that you talk about? So for example, you could say, would you be open for me to attend XYZ event and shoot some behind the scenes iPhone videos? In return, I'd be happy to provide a folder of raw clips and one edited video after the show for you to use on your social media. So this kind of shows you, shows them what exactly they would get kind of in return for you coming and attending the event. And then when you do have that portfolio of work, you can kind of switch it to something like, I've seen this event in my city and would love to come and shoot some behind the scenes content, like the examples listed below. Deliverables can include edited reels, photos and video for live story uploads, or a folder of all the raw video rushes for use on your social media. It goes back to my point about it being an ecosystem and kind of what can you give for something in return.
Thanks for that.
So this one's going on to M's now. Is that right? Yeah, we got the right one. Back in the room. So I think once again on this one, listing some clients that maybe you've worked with beforehand, or kind of work you've done. That first impression is everything. And be a little bit more specific on the show that you would want to cover. Obviously, you kind of said here, I want to reach out as I create content for artists and bands, and would love to express my interest in working with you for any upcoming shows or tours you have planned. Obviously, the easiest one is always something that's in your city. Obviously it keeps costs down in terms of expenses for that sort of artist. So I think being a little bit more specific in that would really help. And then the last one, have I got the slide right? Yes, go on. Is Bella. This was a great example of kind of explaining who you are very quickly, and listing some strong names of people that you've worked with before as well, that people recognize. Maybe you kind of give, as I said, more of a specific call to action of what you would want to do with them, and an idea of kind of a previous piece of work or something you could replicate the style of also helps kind of people to understand what it is that you'd be providing. So there's a few of those responses. Thank you everybody for doing those as well. I think sometimes it's quite good to just do that as an exercise with being able to press send without there being any kind of implications on it, sort of thing. So thanks for all of those. So back to our kind of exercise of hand raising again. So this one's obviously talking about your clients and kind of having jobs and things that might happen along the way. If you can raise a hand if you've had something gone wrong on a job. I'm going to raise my little hand as well on that one. Yeah. Once again, lots of people on that one. If you've had a bad experience with a client, my hand is firmly raised on that one as well, naming no names. Liam's nodding furiously at me. And if you can raise a hand if you feel like you didn't have enough connections or don't have enough connections to get work. Yeah, once again, more hands on that. So once again, just showing that these are all things that we are going through. So yeah, the first section we're going to go into is relationships and them being key, and we're going to start with a lovely little anecdote as well that we saw recently on social media from Tom Coxhead, who works at Defected. He reached out to Tom in 2021 and said that he'd love to come and cover Defected Croatia as a trial run, and they said yes, and he went and did it, and he smashed it because he's a great photographer and a great guy as well. And then since then, he's gone on to cover the majority of their events. Pretty soon after he did that first Croatia event, he did things like Creamfields and Forbidden Forest, and now shoots Ushuaia on a weekly basis. So there's some shots of his Ushuaia stuff. We're talking 3 years ago, and you can see the kind of level that he's gotten to with doing that. And that literally comes from just reaching out. And he actually shot Tom's wedding as well, which was what that post was about beforehand. So lovely little anecdote for there. And I'm going to hand over to Liam.
Sweet. Yeah, so relationships are key, and not only your work is being judged. So in nightlife and creative industry, there's lots of scope to sort of turn one job into another. If you think about an artist, they'll have multiple shows. Maybe that artist manager will look after other artists. If you're working for a venue, there'll be other shows every other weekend. So yeah, really impressing on the first job can lead to multiple jobs, but it's not just the content that you should be worried about. So we sort of wanted to share the story of how we started working with the Martinez brothers. So the Martinez brothers were actually probably our first client as mutual friends back in 2022 when we launched, and they've been our client ever since. So how we sort of got to work with them in the first place was one of my good friends does the marketing there, for the Martinez brothers, and they were having issues with their current team not delivering content on time. So yeah, my friend sort of knew that I was quite reliable and knew I was in town and said, would you like to come and shoot for the bros on Tuesday? And like, we really need to get this sorted. So we did one show, delivered the next day, and then we got offered, to come back and do more dates. So I sort of realized this was sort of like a big opportunity to work with someone off that level, and sort of like, you know, having those as one of your first clients can really like snowball effect the other people you can work with. But when I went into those initial shoots, I sort of realized that yes, like the content being good is one half of what I need to do here, but building a strong relationship is also the other half, and almost like as important. So yeah, essentially I made sure that I like made a really big effort to connect with everyone around them. So that's including like the venue staff, their tour manager, their direct management, and even as far as like their friends and their girlfriend and stuff like that. So sort of like almost remember things that they said for future conversations, definitely pick up on names, so you're not just calling them the Martinez brothers. And sort of just making them feel as comfortable as possible around you while you're shooting. There's like a real balance you need to sort of strike with clients, because they are your clients and they're not your friends. So there needs to be boundaries. But at the same time, you also like don't want to just be that random photographer or that random video person sat in the corner not speaking to anyone. And you want them to feel comfortable. So something to remember is like it's not always about being yourself necessarily, and you do need to adapt to your clients. So for instance, last summer I would shoot for the Martinez brothers on a Tuesday, and then on a Wednesday I would shoot for Emily Lenz, who was heavily pregnant. So that's like two different people I had to kind of be around, two different clients. And then on the flip side, I would then shoot content for Eats Everything, who is a completely different character to the two I just mentioned. So you always have to sort of bring out different parts of your personality and change your approach. So yeah, building on those relationships with the Martinez brothers sort of led us to sort of go on and shoot more content for them. Outside of Vifa, we did Printworks, ADE, Space Miami, and then last year we did pretty much all their shows. So all their Vifa shows, we went on multiple tour dates around Europe and America. And they changed their management at the end of last year, and their tour manager basically told their new management that they only wanted to work with us. So it was really nice to sort of hear that that relationship was built. So that's sort of the positive side of the story. But then on the flip side, there is sort of the other half of what can happen. So yeah, if everyone loves you, you can get lots more jobs, but also it has the same effect if people don't love you. So yeah, we've had creatives in the past where their content is amazing, but are they reliable or are they likable? No. And then they don't get booked again. So we've had people that don't show up to gigs on time. They spend more time in the green room. They don't deliver on time. Maybe they spend more time in the crowd chatting to their friends. They ask for multiple people on the guest list. They're asking for free drinks. They're asking for wristbands. We had a creative in Ibiza last summer who sort of told the guy who was running the party to get out the booth because he didn't have enough room to film. He didn't have a clue who he was, and it didn't go down well. We had a creative in Amsterdam last summer who was rude to who he thought was a random lady, but happened to be the client's manager. So yeah, basically it always sort of pays to have a good impression and a good attitude and to treat everyone like your client. I think most recently as well, we had a situation where one of our creators was rude to the person who worked at the merch stand, but the merch stand attendant was actually directly employed by the artist. So it got fed back, and then you get asked not to shoot content again. So yeah, one of the things we say is that you should always treat everyone as a client and not just the person you're filming, and it really does pay to be nice. There's a funny page called Main Stage Mentality who shares some great memes, and there's like things not to say to the tour manager, and this is definitely one of them, which we get quite a lot. So yeah, just to remember, relationships are key. Create a good impression, and it can go quite a long way. So yeah, I miss that, Audrey.
That's on. So yeah, obviously Liam talking there about one of our first clients as mutual friends. I'm going to go back a little bit to literally my first ever commission job, which was when I moved to London in about 2015. My first job I'd actually moved to London was selling dried fruit. So yeah, quite a sort of step away from where I am now. But yeah, it was kind of, I was doing that so that I could be here in London whilst I looked for kind of my perfect job in music. and I landed my first full-time role at a booking agency called MM2S, that looks after kind of a load of the old Chicago house DJs, including Kerry Chandler. He had a tour coming up, and they got someone to make a video of all the tour dates to kind of put on Facebook and all these sorts of things to promote it. The result that they got back was pretty shoddy. And Darren in the marketing department kind of shouted over to me because he remembered me saying that I did a fine art degree as well. So he was like, surely you can do better than this. I'd never really done anything kind of like that as well, you know, moving animated sort of stuff. But I was like, you know, I'm not going to say no to this opportunity. So I asked for the Photoshop file of the artwork, and I basically spent all night from kind of when I left 6 p.m. at the office until about 2 o'clock in the morning, cutting out the assets and animating them into a kind of tour flyer on, I think I was using Final Cut at the time. I got 50 quid for it, and it took about 8 hours. So hour by hour, probably not the best rate. But I didn't care. I absolutely loved it. And they loved it as well. So the video went out, and then not long after that, Fabric saw the video, and Kerry had an upcoming date as well at Fabric, a headline show. And they asked for me to do one in a similar vein for them, which I think is on the next slide. There you go. So I think if you actually press the little middle bit as well, it should. So yeah, something pretty simple, literally just animating the kind of assets with a little bit of music and the lineup going on over there. Yeah, if you want to pause that on. So that led on to me then getting to work in the club as a photographer. I was kind of, you know, quite under a crypt to start with for what I was doing, but it was the beginning of a relationship, and I went on to shoot in the club for a few years. So kind of within the space of, you know, a couple of months, I went from kind of having never had a commissions job to kind of obviously working in a dream scenario with someone like Fabric. Talking of Fabric as well, one of our creatives, Benedict, has been shooting Fabric for a while now. It was one of his first clients as well. He kind of has really honed his photography skills in the club, and more recently kind of realizing the needs for video as well, actually started taking live clips whilst he was shooting his photos as well. As we were talking about before, these kind of low or low risk scenarios, using those to be able to kind of adapt and, you know, learn new skills and those sorts of things. So he ended up taking some viral clips of Scream and Benga's return, which you can see there. And now, as a part of what he does week in, week out for them, is shooting those live clips. We were actually so impressed with the kind of the way that he's developed his skills in his shooting as well, that we took him out to Miami this March. I think it was the first time he's ever shot abroad. And we put him on a job with Indira Paganotto at Factory Town, and he did some unbelievable clips and videos, which you can see in that second slide there as well. And also Hannah as well. Recently, you've been kind of pushing yourself into the world of live clips as well, which is great. So yeah, I think it's always like great to kind of develop your connections, and especially your clients as well, working out what it is that they might need and working to the needs of the client, even though, you know, it might not be something you do at the moment. There's no reason why you can't learn that skill to kind of help to continue that connection. So going back to my story in kind of 2018, about getting my first Ibiza gig and it turning into another. Anglo Management is a client that I've worked with for a number of years. You know, I never really would have thought that obviously this kind of first job that I, you know, pitched for to kind of work for Hotson City 2 through my mate whilst I was, you know, going out to do my first season would end up now, you know, the first slide me working with Pete Tong at Drum Sheds, and then recently shooting Madness at Edinburgh Castle. So kind of just goes to show, and you know, those first kind of 2018, 2019, that period, I worked with them very closely, you know, week in, week out on shows. Then obviously didn't work with them for a little while because of COVID. That link sort of subsided. And then 2 years ago in Miami, we got a last minute request to kind of cover Pete Tong's pool party, and I think Camel Fat's pool party as well. Yeah, two in one on that one. And it kind of reignited that relationship. And then since then, yeah, we've kind of gone back to working with them, you know, almost on a weekly basis, definitely on a monthly basis, across a load of their shows. So kind of just goes to show that, you know, those client relationships are super important, and to kind of always leave them, you know, in a good manner. So professional in the way in and professional way on the way out. That the road is never closed if you leave it open. So impressions always count. Everyone talks, regardless of good or bad. One good recommendation of referral can cause ripples. I would say at least 85% of our work, I reckon, comes from referrals. So the more people you can impress along the way with solid communication, quick response times, hitting briefs and timelines, the more people you're going to have coming back your way. I think that's on to you. Yeah.
Can I just jump in on that as well, just from a client side? So I am the client from RE side, and we're also trying to do outreach for briefs, but often I don't really know how to articulate what I want. So if you come to me with like a clear idea of what you can provide, or even being able to decipher my own language is very, very helpful. And just also, I guess, to make it really clear from the beginning. So you could say to me, right, Amy, this is what I'm understanding from you. And I can be like, oh, no, I've got it a bit wrong. Or we can work together before it kicks off, as opposed to the other way around. So just a little anecdote for me, but thanks, guys.
Lovely. Thanks, Amy. So we touched on this a couple of times before in previous sessions, but what if things go wrong? So yeah, I shared the story on week 1 about one of the first times I got hired to do live clips, and I didn't have a mic and it sounded awful. And I was just honest straight away, looked for a very quick solution, and actually it didn't end up badly whatsoever. So yeah, if things do go wrong, I think your reaction is most important. Being honest. I think, Amy, you said this last time, this is the best thing, because even if your content isn't the best, at least you leave a really good impression as who you are as a person. So if it didn't work out that time, then, you know, maybe in a year's time, if you cross paths again, you can say, hey, I don't make those mistakes anymore. Here's my portfolio. And they remember you being like, well, you know, you were really honest last time. You've moved on. You've got more experience now. We trust you to take on the job again. And also it's important, if you don't like the client, that you handle that appropriately. And, you know, this is a very real thing. We have lots of clients we don't like. And, you know, sometimes it is just really easy just to be like, you know what, you know, and just, that's it, we're done. But you can't do that, unfortunately. So yeah, you always have to deliver and fulfill what was agreed, and just say thanks, but no thanks, and move on. Because of something that we've noticed in the music industry is that it's actually like pretty small when people do talk, and you'll end up crossing paths with the same people again, even if it's working with different teams, different artists, different venues, promoters. So, you know, if things, you know, as LJ was saying, you know, to be working with a client for the last 10 years, you know, and then maybe it's your client is actually a manager and the artist is constantly changing, it's, you know. So yeah, basically, as the title said before on the screen, relationships are very key, and it's not only your work that's being judged. So yes, focus on delivering great content, but make sure you're also delivering the best version of yourself, a polite version, a very professional version as well.
I would also add to that.
Absolutely.
If
so the next.
Can you hear me? Sorry, that was me. I'm jumping in where I shouldn't be. But just
it's fine. I've got my I've got the sound down, because otherwise we get an echo between the two of them. So
everyone takes.
Apologies for that.
I was just going to add that on the relationships is key side, I would just want to say that obviously people drink when they're in dance music. If you're out in a club, and people will remember, if you know that that third tequila is going to tip you over the edge and turn you into a bit of a reckless maniac, that's absolutely fine if you're out with your friends. But in a work setting, and unfortunately, if you are working in nightlife, then the dance floor, instead of being your safe space for like kind of letting loose, does become a place where you will meet peers on the dance floor or within the industry. It's just something to bear in mind. If you know that one extra beer or maybe that one extra something turns you into someone who perhaps the next day would give you a bit of anxiety about, then just measure your consumption, I would say. Because people do remember, and unfortunately, you know, that safe space on the dance floor is also now your workplace. So look for new dance floors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I kind of decided to not drink mid shift, you know, whilst I was working a long while ago. And I have to say that post-drink work is always much sweeter than it is when you're kind of, you know, drinking your way through a shift sometimes. You know, I know sometimes it can be a little bit anxiety inducing, and to be honest, sometimes, to be fair, if I'm going in something which I think is maybe a stressful situation, a single tequila before you start is probably better than just drinking your way through it, sort of thing. So time and a place for sure. Actually, there's, going back to the story of bad ways to kind of treat scenarios when you get there. We had a client, a creative, who was late for a shoot and requested a whiskey when he arrived from the management company themselves. So yeah, the audacity on that one. So he's not done a job for us since then. Next section, under promise, over deliver, make yourself the hero. So this is one of the most valuable pieces of info I've ever been given. I still often refer to it. I'm still also telling myself it quite often, to be fair, because it's something you can easily forget, but actually probably one of the greatest tools you can get when it comes to making yourself look good with a client. It's quite easy to get carried away in people pleasing and not thinking about the kind of actual implications of what it means for you and your time. Work out what you can feasibly do for the budget, and then work backwards. How much time will this take you as well? And what other projects do you have on as well that might, you know, kind of career into each other? I've had it, you know, quite often where you feel like things are spaced apart, and then suddenly, because of, you know, numerous rounds of feedback or whatever it might be, or a client kind of being slow to come back on something, computer problems, etc., you can end up with a load of things, you know, coming together where you thought you'd have more time than you would. You know, or do you have maybe a shoot the next day or something like that, which actually could take time away from you being able to deliver on something? Once you've kind of really looked at all of those different things, only then can you work out what you can realistically do. And then on top of that, add yourself a little bit more time. That extra kind of buffer time can then kind of help you to account for any situations that you might find yourself in. If you have given yourself that extra time, but then working to your original timeline, then hopefully you should end up coming in before you need to deliver it, or worst comes to worst, delivering when you need to, if the kind of problems arise. So yeah, that's an easy way for me to come in before the client's expectations, and obviously makes it you look better every time because you're coming in before you've set it out to.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, under promise, over deliver is like probably one of the biggest mottos I live by and sort of explain to everyone. We see it quite a lot with quite newer creatives because we can get quite excited. You know, for example, actually just now I'm being chased by a client for a video that's not due yet, and I know it'd be really, really easy to say I'm going to send it tonight, and that will please him, and that'll be like stress free. But I'm probably not going to get the time to deliver it tonight because I'm doing this workshop. Then we're going to have food, then I'm going to get home and probably sleep. So I have to take a step back and think to myself, when I'm actually going to get time to do this, I'm going to get time to do it Thursday. That's still within deadline. I know that's not going to please you as much as tonight, but there's nothing worse than from a client side, which we obviously are sometimes, when we have our creatives and we ask them, when are you going to deliver this? And they say tonight. And then tomorrow morning comes and you still haven't delivered it. And it just turns out you've just promised something you can't deliver on when actually there was no need to. So I want to give some examples here and maybe open up a bit of conversation about what we would think would be some of the issues. So we've got a bit of like an email conversation, you could say. So it says, hey, creative, we would like someone to shoot Carl Cox at Glastonbury. Not a bad job, that. We would like just clips and a few photos. And can you send over your quote, please? Thanks, management. And the creatives replied saying, hey, management, sounds great. Our quote is £500. We'd also be able to deliver an after movie, some behind the scenes interviews, and we could also do some phone videos for live stories too. So raise your hand if you sort of have an opinion on this, but what do you reckon some of the issues that could arise here? So who's got their hand up? Sorry. Yeah, Hannah.
I think maybe because you've given the quote and then you've said like we'd also be able to do this, 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 and this. It's like maybe you're like you might not have any of that stuff in time for like the original time that you give. Maybe it's like overdoing it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the fee there, because one of the points of this is, and we see this happen all the time, is that the client now thinks that for £500 they can get you to do all of that. So if they go back to what they originally wanted, which was just live clips and a couple of photos, that's actually half the stuff you've offered for £500. So now they think immediately, well, for 250 quid, we just want clips and some photos, because for 500 you would have done all that content. And the silly thing is that the client's actually been very direct and saying that, you know, they only wanted a couple of photos and the videos. So you've almost like made the job harder for yourself and talked yourself out of a bit of money. Does anyone else have an opinion? Victor, see your hand up as well.
Sorry, what's a mistake?
Okay, all good, no worries. The other flag with this as well is that it is also just a heap of work. You know, realistically, do you think you'd be able to deliver the best quality content if you're doing live stories, clips, photos, behind the scenes interviews? It just, and an after movie, it's just like for one person set, it's crazy. So what you'd end up probably doing is just, even if the client said, yes, that sounds great, accepted your offer, you would then probably just deliver pretty bad quality content because you sort of overpromised and probably misjudged how much you can take on. So yeah, this is another funny meme from Main Stage Mentality, but yeah, Phyllis.
Can I ask something quickly?
Yeah,
what would be do you think this is a fair price for like a few photos, and it was a video as well, I think. So what would be for you, like what would be the right pricing on a package like that, on a basic package, for example?
It depends on your experience, but if that was Carl Cox at Glastonbury, I mean, Carl Cox would definitely have £500 to pay a photographer and videographer. So I think you'd probably be okay there. If it was a smaller artist, and also Glastonbury don't usually give the biggest fees, but yeah, around that mark, I would say that would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Good. But yeah, just a reminder that, yeah, you know, when you take on more work, it's more edits. And that's, as LJ was saying, it's something to always, you know, consider. The job is not just the shoot itself, the job is all the edits that come afterwards. So maybe you'll be in a studio of an artist for an hour and they just want loads of like interviews filmed, but then that might turn into like 10 lots of edits for socials, you know. So although you're only in the studio shooting for an hour, you might be editing for 2 days. And yeah, if you've got other jobs on it, you know, you need to manage your time. So our next section is don't be reactive, be proactive.
That's one, thank you. I think something also worth thinking about as well is, you know, if you're given a set like that, most of the time someone's only performing for kind of an hour and a half sort of thing. So, you know, it's actually not that long of a time. Even when I find myself shooting both photos and videos in an hour and a half set, obviously you're splitting that time. So you only have 45 minutes for each of those things. So think about what is worth it. You know, personally, if it was up to me, I would only ever want to do one of those things at a time, because I know that I can provide a much better job, you know, by doing one thing rather than both things. A lot of clients now are asking for both sides of it. So I think it's just worth, you know, taking into account how long you actually have to be able to do this sort of stuff and to be able to produce at a, you know, high level.
So I did forget one part of my notes there, but yeah, I would always recommend as well, if you're taking on a shoot and you do manage to capture some extra content, so potentially just for you wanted to create a fun edit, or maybe you had your film camera and you took some behind the scenes, or here's some film photos I got developed, which a lot of our creatives do now because everyone loves film. Then yeah, that's also such a better way of doing it. You know, you've agreed to deliver something for the client, and then you're delivering some extra bits at sort of extra value. That's going to go down so much better than you agreeing to deliver loads and then only actually fulfilling half of it. So yeah, basically keep it simple, focus on delivering quality, and yeah, over to you, LJ.
All good, thanks, mate. So yeah, so the next section is about not being reactive but being proactive. Once again, another thing that I have lived by for a long time, and I say this a lot as well to people who are just in the kind of development stages of their career. I spent many years when I first started out very much in the proactive sort of stage of things, and it can be a huge help to get yourself to where you want to get to. So in terms of kind of finding these clients and your connections and these sorts of things, social media obviously is one of your greatest tools now, not only for showcasing your work, but obviously for finding new clients. So maybe start by researching your favorite brands or artists or promoters that are, are putting on parties or whatever it might be. Starting by kind of liking or following all these posts might get you noticed, but it's probably more in the reactive state, as realistically they're probably not going to reach out to you straight off the back of something like that. So kind of reaching out to these brands and similar pictures to the ones that you did in the exercise obviously is a great way to kind of be able to hopefully go and shoot for these people. Another kind of approach, obviously, if you get booked by somebody, by an artist or somebody that is shooting at a festival, then you're probably going to be more than likely introduced to maybe the promoter or the event manager, or there may be other artists there. So kind of obviously making sure that you're making proper introductions and good impressions. And then obviously if you kind of get into a big part of conversation, exchanging those social media handles. Obviously emails I think is probably even better than a social media handle, as things can quite often get lost. People can remember, forget who what your handle might be, etc., etc. So getting those key contacts might mean that you're kind of seen more regularly and lead to kind of more work afterwards. Kind of leads back to the whole it's not who you know, who knows you scenario. And yeah, as we kind of mentioned beforehand, the likes of kind of Lewis Nesbitt being at a festival and being there and being proactive, taking photos and then tagging those artists as well. As I said before, everybody wants and needs content as well. So, those couple of photos that you might share on your stories that not necessarily someone that you're shooting for at the time sort of thing. I was shooting an artist last week for an album launch and shared a group photo that I took as they were the support DJ, and they've messaged me saying, would you mind sharing this photo sort of thing. It continues to keep that the wheels in motion. So Liam's going to go on to some little example of how we've pitched to client.
Yeah, so one thing that we learn is that clients don't always connect the dots. So sometimes you need to give them a push in the right direction. Sometimes you need to do their job for them. So we often find that we get a lot of requests last minute, using Glastonbury as an example, but we got multiple requests literally the week of Glastonbury. Hey guys, you got anyone at Glastonbury? It's the week of Glastonbury. This was booked in like months ago. It's like probably the biggest festival you'll play this summer, and 2 days before you play, you're now deciding you need content. Like, what's going on? So basically me and LJ worked out that kept happening all the time, and we're like, how can we combat that? So what we did was, if you have a client that you've worked with a couple times, or an artist, venue promoter, we sort of like look on their RA page or their tour dates, and we work out, okay, they'll probably want content for this, they'll probably want content for that. Actually, we're going to be at this place already. And then we sort of hit them up and we say, oh, hey, we think these shows would be good for content. We're going to be here. Do you want to lock it in advance? And managers usually just love you for it because of your showing interest and a good work ethic, but also you're saving them the last minute struggle of trying to find someone. A little tip as well is that we do something when we work with venues, because obviously sometimes they don't know how well a party is going to sell. We sort of lock in dates provisionally and then give them like a 2-week breakout clause so they can commit to certain shows, and then for whatever reason, this show isn't selling well, or like the headliner pulled out, they'll let you know 2 weeks in advance, so then you can like at least find a replacement and find other work. That's also a good thing you can offer to clients, so that you can book in jobs 6 months in advance and then offer them a little way out, so they don't just feel like overwhelmed by all the money they're going to spend. So it's also some other tips as well about like sort of reaching out to your connections and building more clients. As we sort of said, and as you can sort of tell from LJ's examples earlier, it's also like really useful to look at who you're working with. So if you're working with a certain artist and you're dealing with a certain management, like for instance, we work a lot with Frame. We look on the Frame roster and they have Eats Everything, Chasing Status, Patrick Topping, TJ Boring, Ariel Free. and now we work across all of them. And that's not like exclusively, but we'll work across like a lot of their shows, and that's just because we get on with Frame and we hit them up and said, hey, I know we've only been working with Chase and Stayers, but we'd love to work across your other artists too. And again, they were like, yeah, great, let's do it. And something that sort of came up as well, which I saw from one of your pitches in the exercise, which is very good, is sort of doubling up, and especially in nightlife, it's something that you can do quite often, and if you can. So if you're at a festival or a club night shooting for one artist, and you think you definitely have the time and resources to shoot for another one on the lineup, then definitely reach out. Say, hey, I'm already going to be here shooting for this person. I was wondering if you'd also like content. And this is something that I did a couple months ago. Messaged DJ Boring's manager and said, hey, I'm going to be at Project 6, already filming Subtract, who's literally on right before DJ Boring. Let me know if you need any content. And they were like, yeah, we ended booking it in. It was like an easy win, basically. And the good thing for this as well is that sometimes, I mean, the reason why I did this, actually, I'll be honest, is I quoted Subtract's team a fee that basically he couldn't meet. And I was like, you know what, I really want to work with you. And I know there's other artists on that lineup that I'm going to be able to get work from. So I'll be able to get the fee I wanted, split costs for a couple artists, and then everything's good. So there's also like a very good trick to, if you're maybe not getting the fee you wanted, or you want to earn some extra money, which everyone does, to sort of hit up double artists as well. And then this is also a story from last summer when I was in Ibiza. We did Radio 1 weekend, and basically it was like probably the best festival ever for us because of everything gets streamed on the radio. So everyone's sets are like 30 minutes long. And all our clients were just there. So we ended up shooting for like the Martinez brothers, Eats Everything, Sam Divine, KTB. And yeah, we just, again, we just sent them a message saying, hey, we're already going to be here. We have lots of time. Do you want some content? And then, yeah, from one festival, we ended up covering 5, 6, 7 artists. And, it's really great to sort of have that to your portfolio. So yeah, as sort of we've said in previous sessions, being sort of proactive, being like forthcoming and sort of, doing something, and, it really is important. So yeah, hopefully maybe next time you get a job or a client, maybe you can have a look at who else they're working with if things are going well, and see if you can expand your reach across.
Thanks, mate. Obviously, these examples are very kind of nightlife and events focused. That's the majority of what we do. But I think anybody, any of your kind of clients, quite often, PR companies or marketing companies, management companies, whatever it might be, more often than not are going to be working with multiple clients. So I think it's something that you can apply across the board, whether it be in nightlife or whatever the kind of world it is that you're specifically working in. So I'm going to move on to the power of yes. I think a big part of growing as a creative is doing new things and learning new skills. And quite often you might find yourself saying yes to things even when you maybe don't know how to do them, or don't feel ready to do them, or as we've mentioned in week 1, don't have the equipment to do them, sort of thing. But by saying yes and taking on things that maybe feel like they're out of your reach, obviously it enables you to kind of keep pushing yourself and pushing your boundaries. Something called neuroplasticity. I don't know if any of you are brain surgeons here, probably not, but the definition of it is the ability of the nervous system to change its activity in response to stimuli by reorganizing its structure, functions, or connections. So we quite literally keep our brain alive by keeping it active, by doing new things. I'm sure all of you feel, when you go and do a new job or you visit a new city, that kind of feeling afterwards as well. There's, kind of a renewed and reinvigorated kind of energy in your brain as well. And I think it's a super important thing to continue to do as a creative. So whilst it's got one brain surgeon in the house. So we keep our brains alive by keeping it active. The more you work it, the more you gain from it. Whilst it's great to kind of keep pushing yourself forward, towards new things, there's also kind of a flip side. For a long time, I'd only ever say yes to things. In fact, I kind of end up overloading myself a little bit. So I think it's important to kind of have a balance with the two of those, which is something that we're going to talk about next week. So we're going to go to the Q&A section. We had a few questions from last week's session that were appropriate for this week's session. So we're going to kind of go through some of them now. So one of them here was, these are all anonymous, by the way, so you can let me know if it was your question and you want kind of to talk more on it, but here we go. Obviously, going to events and introducing yourself to people is one way to make connections, and you personally might think you've made a connection, but how do you get that person to remember you and to actually make a connection on their side of things? So for me, I would say kind of first impressions are everything. So I've done a couple of do's and don'ts for me that I think would be the thing which would create a lasting impression. So messaging your contact ahead of time before you get into a shoot, just kind of introducing yourself, especially if you kind of haven't had that introduction to start with, just saying, hey there, I'm LJ and I'll be shooting for you / the artist or whatever it might be tonight. Just wanted to check maybe if my name was accredited for media passes and there's anything else that I should know about this evening. It just helps that kind of touch point before you then go on to meet somebody at the event. Obviously turning up on time or even early as well. Sometimes maybe going back to that previous point, you might not be on the list, or traffic can pile up, all these sorts of things. Just accounting for that obviously stops you kind of coming in flustered. Getting yourself in and just asking for somewhere to be able to set up. Quite often there isn't a good sort of space, so just working with what you've got and not demanding a full dressing room, I think is probably the appropriate way to go about it. And then introducing yourself to obviously other people that are there, whether it might be if you're in an event, so maybe the stage manager or the lighting tech, tour managers, obviously the artists themselves, if the kind of opportunity arises, or the talent that you're working with, even especially on studio shoots as well, that sort of thing, just, working out who everybody is and just introducing yourself, regardless of who they might be. So these are some don'ts for me. Not using kind of the opportunity to talk further business whilst you're on a shoot. Obviously, touching base right at the end of it and just, sort of wrapping things up is fine. But just sort of simple hellos, introducing yourself, working professionally is often enough for someone to want to invite you back. We've touched on this one before as well. Obviously, asking for drinks tokens, wristbands, etc., etc. As soon as you get there, if these are the sorts of things, obviously everybody will need a drink time to dine, and you may have some friends at an event or whatever it might be, but just wait and get into the flow of something before you go and ask that. Finding the opportune moment with these sorts of things, is the way to go about that for that. If there's any problems as well, finding appropriate times to kind of speak to event managers and tour managers and explain the problem. We talked about too many people being in the booth. Kicking people out is not the way to go about it. Speaking to the tour manager, saying, look, I'm really struggling to get the shots here. Is there, can we do anything about this? Is obviously going to be the better way to do it. Or the lighting tech, if there's too much haze in the room or something like that, just sort of saying to them, so would you mind if we cut it for 5-10 minutes, which is something I had to do on Saturday, just saying, I'm struggling to get a bit of a clear shot at the moment. They're usually totally cool with that sort of thing. The worst thing you can do is afterwards sort of saying, I couldn't get the shot because it was too hazy, because it's quite literally a flick of a button to be able to sort that situation out. Someone's asked on how you can effectively network with potential clients in the industry. Some good things to do is face-to-face networking. There's places like Brighton Music Conference, IMS, ADE, Miami Music Week, Sonar, Berlin Dance Event, all of these sorts of things. Always really good places to meet people and mingle. Liam's got a question.
It's also good to sort of remind yourself as well that networking doesn't necessarily have to be with clients. It's really good to network with other creators when you're at events and make a good impression with them as well. For instance, if you met me and LJ at an event and you were really nice to speak to and looked like you're doing a great job, you then might find out we have a creative agency and we could offer you loads more work. So, networking with your peers is also a really good thing to do when you're at events. Also before the creative agency, what we used to do is if we couldn't do a job, we'd then recommend someone we know who could do it. So if you've made an impression on other creatives at that job, then that's also going to help you out. We are a bit conscious of time, so I was wondering if we can open up to questions, people in the chat or in the session now. Does anyone have a question? Just raise your hand. we've covered everything. No more knowledge needed.
Okay, I'll go back to answering a couple. We got a couple more from the feedback sheet as well. Someone's asked about pitching articles as a freelance writer as well, and kind of getting articles published. I mean, Liam, obviously working here at a major publication, you can just send everything to him. I'm joking. Yeah, you know, if you maybe have a writer that you like, or someone that you get into, all of these contacts are listed online. You know, and I think that you would be surprised how often, you know, you would get a warm response to somebody from somebody saying, hey, I love this piece that you did. I think, you know, reaching out in that way, you'll probably get a fairly decent response from them. But, you know, all of these contacts are out there. Someone asked whether giving a business card is still important. Definitely not. And I have had business cards a little while, and they are gathering dust on my shelf. As I said, these days, I think social media realistically is, you know, the new age business card, really, at the end of the day. So that's how I go to. Liam's got a point.
Yes, I don't know if don't know what phones people are using, but you know, I think Android also got it as well. But the iPhone, they've made it like this really simple thing now, where you just, as long as Bluetooth's on, you just like touch the ends of two phones together, and it instantly like shares contact details. And you can also do it so it shares social media. So if you are out and about and you wanted to be like, hey, grab my contact, you can literally just touch phones, and then they have your contact, they have your Instagram, stuff like that. So that's a pretty good move. Yeah, just make sure we're wrapping up on time. Should we move to some key takeaways from this session? So yeah, not only your work is being judged, so yeah, remember it's how you present yourself. Adapting to your client, so remembering that every client is going to be different. So yeah, make an effort to sort of get to know them. Under promise, over deliver. And then be proactive and double up jobs. So yeah, reaching out to clients, maybe looking at jobs you already have on and see how you can get the most out of them. And then having a look at one last exercise why we still have you guys. So basically what we want to do is, because next week's our last session, we'd really like to see if we can actually get multiple people in the group a job, or at least one of you. So combining last week's exercise and this week's session, we want you to write a pitch to an existing client. So either taking on the feedback from the start of the session on the pitches that you gave, and add in some tips from this week's session. We then want you to press send. We'll then be able to help you next week on what the next steps would be. So once you press the send message, maybe we can catch up to see how that went. Hopefully you're all part of the Telegram group, which me and LJ are in. So if you're not confident on sending, press and send, maybe you can reach out, send us a message, and then we can make sure that you are. And then, yeah, hopefully next week we'll have some stories about how that went. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think next week we are covering, here's some resources, yeah. So this one's for you, isn't it, LJ, actually?
Yeah, so this is a podcast. They've got it on, it's on Spotify as well and YouTube, but it's the High Performance Podcast, which pretty much does exactly what it says on the tin. They get, you know, everyone from, this is obviously music based one, but they've got sports people on there. They've got, you know, the guy that runs Timpson. They've got, you know, the woman that started and sold Joe Malone. There's some really, really, really interesting stories on that one. I highly recommend that one. I've listened to a lot of those.
These are two Instagram channels that maybe you should check out. So Ian or Lon, Ian? It is Ian. It is Ian. Ian is Fisher's tour content photographer and videographer. Really nice guy. He's constantly sharing really basic but really effective tips on how to improve your shooting. He also does some really cool behind the scenes of like what it's like to be on tour with an artist. And sharing like really realistic tips on like how to do quick edits, like set up lighting on the go, etc. And then also time-lapse worlds for anyone who is really into editing. Again, it's almost similar to what LJ shared in previous sessions, but they basically create the most amazing videos, but then show you step by step how they made them and make it seem very possible. So maybe a good one to dive into if you wanted to check out some editing tips. And then
This last one is an initiative by Team Love, who are the team responsible for Love Saves the Day, Love In, and Love International. You can see a bit of a thread going on there. This is their Capture Forwards initiative. You can see here, here's the creatives that basically were part of it in the last year. It's open at the moment for people. I think it's mainly Bristol based, but it's basically to come and shoot some stuff at their festival. Obviously, we touched on this last week about coming and shooting for festivals, and you know, who's getting the most out of it. I mean, these guys ended up in a billboard with a QR code underneath it, which linked directly to their socials. So this is definitely the right way to go about it from them. So yeah, anyone kind of Bristol based, and they've got a load of other kind of initiatives as well through the big team page. So definitely something to check out there. Oh, yeah, and that's that. So yeah, next week is going to be on delivery. So same time next week. Yeah, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, next week is our final session, so we'll probably focus a lot more on Q&As. So if you have had any questions from over the 4 weeks or 3 weeks, then yeah, bring them to next week's meeting and we can definitely discuss. Kurt, did you raise your hand or was
No, sorry, that's
high five us or something? I don't know.
Sorry, guys.
All good. Well, yeah, enjoy the rest of your weeks.